Welcome to the Closing Table with host Tamera, where we break down how to be successful in real estate and what it's really like to work in the real estate business. This is the Closing Table with Lawyer's Title.
Welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Tamera. Today, we are going to talk about what does the NAR settlement mean for real estate business. But first, if you like my content, you're really going to love my escrow team. Let's get a conversation going about your title needs. You can reach out to me on any of my social media platforms. Today's guest is someone that I've known for a very long time, and you're going to know his face also. Russell Berry, he's the broker of record for Great Western Realty, but also he was the 2022 Texas Realtors Chairman. So he's the immediate past president. Did I get that right?
A couple of years removed. So the good thing is, and we talked about this,
yes,
I'm unfiltered, uncensored.
I know. You don't have a script, which I really appreciate. But he's also currently serving on the NAR Policies and Emerging Issues Committee, which that sounds really busy right now.
It is. It's a lot of words for just saying like the group of people who take care of all the MLS issues around the country.
Oh, okay. So, I thought emerging issues. I keep saying emergency because maybe that's on, subconsciously on purpose. I don't know.
Emergency, exactly. And maybe going back to what I said before, maybe I should be scripted.
Yeah.
Now that you said that, maybe I should be scripted, but I won't be.
Today, and we're going to get this content out really quickly because things, have unfolded in the last 10 days. The NAR settlement was announced, just to give everyone context, today is Tuesday. So not last Friday, but the Friday before. And we've all kind of dropped what we were doing to figure out what does this mean for the real estate business going forward. And so let's kind of start with backing up a little bit. Russell, first of all, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I appreciate you very much.
It's going to be fun.
And so I want to start with, and this was me just diving right in because we got a lot to cover. How did we get here? Let's talk about how did we get here?
Yeah, so I will also expound a little bit on why I'm a good person to talk about this. 23 years in the business. I know you've been in the business for quite a long time. We've seen a lot of changes, right? You and I were laughing about how CFPB was going to change the whole thing. Oh, yeah. Back in the day, people were talking about the books going digital. And even last year, I think people said that AI was going to replace realtors. None of that happened. So I just want to start by saying, hey, everybody take a deep breath. It's going to be okay. We're still going to have a real estate business. There might be some changes and there might be a pendulum swinging a little far to one side or whatever, but it's going to be okay. But truly how we got here.
Well, wait, before you do that, I appreciate that approach very much. And I told you that yesterday because the first layer of things that we have to peel away from this is the panic of what is happening, right?
The immediate reaction.
Their immediate reaction, visceral reaction that has just got everybody really pumped up. We've got a lot of misinformation out in the marketplace right now and in the media. We'll work on some of that through this show today. But I think coming to this and approaching it with grace and patience and less panic is really the way to go. I told you this, there's a Zoom or a podcast or whatever you want to call it, video out there that Sharon, he's the president of Real, did. And he's a billionaire tech genius, lives in Dubai. You would think that at this point he's just, so high in the stratosphere. But he did a video also that I find is full of patience and understanding and calmness. And I appreciated his approach. It really is something anyone could, when he breaks it down, something anyone could understand, similar to your approach to this today, is really making this easy for us to implement and understand. But we have to start with stripping away that panic. Right. And so thank you for saying that.
And I love this business, but we're really good at excitement and change and being creative.
We like drama. We love drama. I always say I like to watch the train wreck, but I don't want to be on the train.
Probably why we're so successful about what we do, right? Is we know it and we get it and we see it and we've been through this stuff before. But really, to go back to what you said about how did we get here? There's a couple of million factors that kind of aligned. We started out with a rule, and I'm even going to go back further than people we even realize, but we started out with the MLS rule 5.0, where everything had to be on MLS and you couldn't have these pocket listings. You had to share your information with other agents, but that made consumers start thinking, hey, what else is going on in there in that MLS? What information am I not getting or am I giving to people that are belong to this MLS, and how does that affect me in as far as selling my property? So they started, saying, hey, maybe we should all know what commissions are being offered. And you saw a really easy kind of forward part on the MLS of saying, let's just publish those commissions. Whatever the commissions are going to be, we're going to publish them so the entire world, all consumers could see this. Well, when they started seeing this and they saw that maybe they're all kind of aligned in a certain number, whatever that number might be around the nation, then maybe there's something to do with antitrust, an antitrust lawsuit. So some lawyers got together with some very savvy sellers and said, hey, this number keeps coming up not only in DFW, but in Florida and all across the nation. How can that be a coincidence that there's a number that's coming up, the same number all over the place? This is obviously a violation of antitrust laws, and let's go ahead and sue the National Association of Realtors as well as some of the other big players out there because they have been price fixing, especially where it comes to commissions. So that's kind of how we all started here.
About what year? Like
that was in 2020, right during
2020, yeah,
because we all had nothing else to do in 2020, right? We were all sitting behind our computers or in our desk and looking for things to do. So it started about 4 years ago, and it made its way through the legal system. And earlier this year, the litigation came to a halt with the actual verdict in the case against the National Association of Realtors.
Right.
Now, some other things happened in this time frame where some of the big companies decided they were going to put out a settlement offer.
Yep. KW was one of them.
Yeah, KW was one of them, and all of the big ones. They came up with some number that they thought would satisfy this. But the National Association of Realtors stuck in with this lawsuit because truly at the end of the day, they thought they were in the right, and I'm not going to say whether they were or not. And they also had to stick by their other litigants that stayed in the lawsuit. So it wasn't like they could say, hey, we're out. You guys take care of it on your own. We're going to settle. You guys, have to deal with this lawsuit. So at the end of the day, they stuck by it, and the verdict was unfavorable to the National Association of Realtors. So at that point, National Association of Realtors said, hey, we're going to fight this. We're going to appeal it. We think it was a bad judgment. There were legal errors here, blah, 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 whatever. We're going to take this all the way forward. But that very same day that verdict came out, another lawsuit was filed.
Mm-hmm.
And then a couple of months after that, lawsuits were filed all over the nation, including here in Texas.
Yep.
Texas Realtors, some of the larger associations,
Metrotex,
even some teams and other companies and individuals were named in lawsuits.
Okay.
So at one point here in Texas, and this was back in February, so it's probably more than that, at one point there were 48 litigants.
Wow.
Only here in the state of Texas. And then that went to Florida and Utah and Pennsylvania and everywhere across the country. So in my mind, and this is, of course, I probably should have started out with my disclaimer, right? That this is all my opinion and everything, but 23 years in the business probably formulated pretty well. In my opinion, I think that NAR saw the writing on the wall. Fighting the legal appeal, fighting this all across the country. This is not a good thing for the National Association of Realtors, for realtors in general, and for anybody's pocketbook. Because you and I know, if I were, as a litigant, myself, Russell Berry, going to court, it's going to cost me a lot of money.
Well,
and this is not covered by E&O insurance. Remember, there's no insurance to cover you from all this stuff.
Well, and also NAR, unfortunately, has had some other bad press. So I would think that they would be anxious to start to get some of this stuff resolved.
True.
Yeah.
So, they came up with this number, $418 million, and two changes that they were going to start implementing with anybody who is a member of the National Association of Realtors. Now, the great thing about this is, in this settlement offer that they put on the table here, it covers pretty much everyone who is a member of the National Association of Realtors. There's some caveats to this with companies that do more than $2 billion.
Right.
But there is mechanism for them to be included in this so that they can't be sued. So,
okay, I don't know that I've heard about the mechanism for them to be included.
Now they're being a little they haven't really rolled that out yet, but in my mind, I'm thinking that if you do more than $2 billion, $2 billion in gross sales, in order for you to be included, it might cost you some money.
Oh.
Because remember, $418 million is a lot of money.
A lot of money.
So if you're going to be included in this, and remember, just last week, Compass came out and proposed their own settlement. So that's what I'm thinking. That might have something to do with. I don't know. That's way above my pay
Yeah,
grade.
understood.
But there is a mechanism. There's some way that everybody can be included in this. That's a great thing for little people like me who are yet to be, and I shouldn't say this, who are yet to be involved in any lawsuit. Nobody's named me yet. They've probably not named you or a couple of other companies out there. But sooner or later, the writing was on the wall. We were all going to be
Yeah.
sued at some point.
Yeah.
So think about this. I think it's a great thing. People are saying, "Oh, the National Association of Realtors threw us under the bus." I think this is a great thing.
No, when
Let's
I
settle,
heard-
move on.
Yeah, when I heard it was a national settlement that would take care of all the copycat lawsuits, I thought it was a
Yeah.
smart move.
Yeah, absolutely. So those other two caveats that go along with this $418 million, and I should probably throw into this. They've proposed that they're going to pay 197.98 million the first year, 197.78 million the second year, and then 70 some million the last 2 years.
That was to avoid bankruptcy, I'm assuming.
Well, they could have done bankruptcy in Chapter 11, but this is how they structured it. So the president of the National Association of Realtors said that it will be no increase in dues this year. Of course, we've already paid our dues,
right. I heard
and
that.
next year.
And that's important
Exactly.
for realtors to understand.
Now, NAR has some assets. They have assets, and I think this is funny that we're talking about it at this time of what's going on with other people's assets, and they might not be able to make their bond and stuff like this. NAR has assets. They will be able to do this. So this isn't a big, stretch of any imagination. They figured this out, and they figured out the number of 418 million as something that they can afford. So I don't want anybody to think that this is going to put anybody under. There are ways to make this happen, including getting money from those other people who want to be involved in the settlement, et cetera, et cetera. So they've got this figured out. There's a way they can do this, and it's going to happen. Now, with that being said, the other two caveats are that the MLS will now no longer have anything to do with posting commissions of any kind. So some people ask
Wait. Does that mean that you can no longer collect commissions as a realtor?
Absolutely not. That just means that your MLS, that NAR governs the rules for, remember my MLS emerging
I
issues.
just wanted to spell a few myths while we're talking here today, if we can.
It just means that the MLS cannot have anything to do with posting or promoting commissions of any kind.
Can I post commissions on my website, Russell?
Absolutely.
As a practicing realtor?
And I will tell you, this is what I was saying about being creative in the real estate industry. I have faith in all of us that this will be taken care of before July. Yeah. And if it's not taken care of before July, that's okay. We make phone calls, we figure out what the commissions are going to be paid, or we negotiate them in a whole different way. So, so the pendulum, like I said, will swing a little bit, but there's people already out there working on it. I can already tell maybe I have to pay a subscription to be involved in this website, $20 a month or whatever it is to find out what these commissions are. But people are working on it. So
that makes sense. I can see that.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Maybe your MLS dues will go down, or maybe MLSs will decouple from associations. I say that because most MLSs are either owned by or associations have a stake in the profits that the MLS make, or maybe they don't even make any profits and give it back to the partner shareholders, which is kind of like our model up here in North Texas. But that MLSs may have a different role in the future. Right now, I think we're positioned very well here in Texas because we're a non-disclosure state, right? You can't just go out and get that information on what concessions were, going along with the house, or how, the actual price that it actually sold, or any of that kind of information. But other states aren't so lucky. So where does the MLS fit in? To be determined, right? To be determined. I still think, that's another thing too, is we haven't even talked about guaranteeing commissions to cooperating brokers. There are rules that go along with your MLS that may or may not be in effect anymore. So if MLSs can't promote or provide any information on commissions, how does that work with agents paying commissions and going to arbitration with the MLS, or MLS is enforcing those rules? We haven't even got into that kind of stuff, but I think it'll all work itself out.
That's a big can of worms.
I know. A whole nother one.
I'm processing.
Yeah, exactly. That's a whole nother discussion that we can have for another time.
So I think, and while we're going through some of these points of interest in the settlement, I'm going to respond with what have I heard as the biggest concerns that I, because I've been meeting with people and talking with people, of course, ever since this started. And one of the things that we all agree on is that I make a good conduit for information, right?
Absolutely.
I have the podcast, I have social media, I'm talking to my clients. I've actually had 3 or 4 mastermind meetings already about this. So, and we will continue to have those conversations with my valued realtor partners. So, provide like passing information through to you, asking you questions, telling you what I'm hearing from my clients as their concerns is an important part of this conversation today. So in response to more disclosure on the as far as the cooperating broker, so we hadn't even gotten there yet in those conversations. So we'll have to make a note of that when I come back to it. But I think what the concern is my phone going to blow up, or am I not going to get a response on if the listing agent is offering a commission, because already people don't answer the phone, right? So we've been talking about, it'll be posted on websites, it'll be posted, in all different types of locations, Showing Time, Broker Bay, those sorts of facilitators too. It just won't be listed on the MLS. And I think the fear is that we're going to have to pick up the phone and call an agent, and we're not going to get a response.
Right, and we might. And that might be a detriment to a seller out there, right?
Yeah.
So a seller has chosen their agent because their agent is going to work in their best interest. And if you're not answering the phone, are you really working in the best interest of your client, right? So this is the second part of it that's going to bring up a whole bunch more questions for you. Is the second.
And by the way, this is. I don't know if you can see this, but the memes are killing me. This new listing description in MLS, this 3-bedroom home will be perfect for you as it has recently.
Right. Exactly.
The memes are killing me.
Yeah. So, so there are those things out there. But the second part of this is that the National Association of Realtors has agreed in the settlement that every member will have to have a signed written agreement, which is we call a buyer's rep agreement,
right,
with each buyer before they show a property.
And now, that's a mic dropper too.
Right. But this is the thing. I love that people are taking this so literally. Literally, I can't just take a phone call and go show them a property anymore. That's not what it means. And I laugh about this because we already have agents out there that aren't doing things exactly the right way, and we know the way it says and the practical way to do things, right? The practical way to do things is probably meet with a client, talk to them, have a buyer's consultation, talk to them about how you get paid. The best thing about, I think, this whole settlement thing is it's going to be way more transparent. It's going to be more transparent for the agent, how they get paid. It's going to be more transparent for the client. It's going to be more transparent for the seller, who's getting paid what in the deal. I think all of this is a good thing for free enterprise. However, you don't have to get that buyer's rep agreement signed before you take somebody out. You could have it signed at the house. You could have it signed later on. I mean, this is a whole thing about being too literal in this.
Point of clarification, it's my understanding that the buyer's rep has to be signed before a buyer enters a home to be showed to them.
Yeah, that's what it says, right?
Okay.
How practical is that? That's absolutely not practical. Now, what we do on the other hand is we get pre-approvals. So we hope that the lender has done their job and everything. And we hope that an agent is going to have that. But the buyer's rep agreement is only between the buyer and the agent. It's not between the seller. The seller doesn't care any of this kind of stuff, right? So that's really to protect you on getting paid as an agent. It's not to protect the buyer. It's not to protect anybody else. It's to protect you getting paid. So if you happen to show a property of somebody that isn't represented under a buyer's agent, you're just taking the chance of not getting paid, But this is what I will say. Any good agent or any agent that's going to be in the business for a long time is going to have those buyer consultations. If somebody's not willing to sign a buyer's agency agreement with me, maybe I won't show them a property. Or maybe I'll show them one property for free or 2 properties for free and hope that I might get paid in the end of this or whatever. But any good buyer's agent is going to have a consultation. And this consultation will be way more than just how I get paid. It's what are you looking for? What am I doing for you? What is my value to you? Why do you want to pay me? And hopefully at the end of all of this stuff, the buyers will say, you know what? I would never go into a transaction without having somebody represent me. Now, I know you're going to ask me, right? I've heard the same thing. I've heard that buyer's agency is going to go away and every buyer is going to go and represent themselves.
Well, okay. I haven't heard exactly that. I mean, one of the things, things is we are wondering as a collective, will we see an increase in unrepresented buyers?
Right. And we absolutely may. But that's, again, that pendulum swinging. Once they find out that they don't know what a survey exception is, or I'm going to get into your world a little bit. Maybe they haven't read Schedule C of their title commitment.
Mm-hmm.
How many buyers have ever read a Schedule C of their title commitment?
I work for a title company. I haven't read.
No, yeah. You better have, right? Or they don't get the HOA documents delivered correctly, or they don't know they can opt out of it as a buyer, or the seller's disclosure is not filled out, nor do they ever get a seller's disclosure, which is a state law. Right now, you've got people that are having a transaction.
It's so interesting because I work with such professionals. Like, I don't know one that would not give you a seller's disclosure.
Right. So we're kind of like bouncing these things off the wall, the what ifs, and I think the what ifs will happen. Sure, there will be buyers out there that say, I don't need that representation, or sellers saying that I don't want to pay a commission. So if you're going to pay a commission, you've got to come out with it of your own.
Well, and that also leads to another thing that we all as a collective expect to see an increase in expireds that have no buyer's agent commission.
Sure,
listed.
absolutely. And this is one thing that I would think during.
By the way, that was a lead source.
There you go. Exactly. Expired. Yeah, exactly. How long have we worked expireds? Never in the past 4 years. Right?
I know people that work expireds very successfully.
You absolutely should be doing that.
I think you should be working expireds.
But we have to think, why did they expire? They expired because they didn't have the exposure. They were maybe priced incorrectly. Maybe they had the wrong agent that was listing them that didn't have the experience. So all this stuff goes back into value of what your value is as a buyer's agent and a seller's agent.
Well,
so
and that's
would I show you a
nonstop.
property that's overpriced? I might show it to you, but I'll say, hey, when we make an offer, these are the numbers that I come up with.
Right.
I don't know where they got that number. So I'm showing my value again as a buyer's agent.
And we saw a lot of that back in 2018 where houses were, to me, this was not my favorite idea for a realtor, taking a listing. I saw a lot of issues with it, but it was, okay, Mr. Seller, we'll do it. We'll price it your way for 2 weeks. And when that doesn't work out, then we're going to do it my way. Right. Meanwhile, the house starts sitting and getting stale on MLS. And we talked about that yesterday. And I think I appreciate the realtor. My favorite realtor is the realtor that's confident, not only in themselves, but also in their profession, and going to the seller, having the confidence and being able to demonstrate their value and going to the seller and saying, okay, Mr. Seller, this is what it's going to take to sell your house. Because commissions are still a thing.
Right.
I mean, we didn't get away with dispelling commissions for realtors, right? And so the traditional, thing, I don't want to say standard because I want to be careful with talking about commissions. But typically the seller would pay I just said a different way of the same word.
Yeah.
Typically, standardly. But what we have seen in the past, maybe consistently, and did I just say it another way, the same way, is that the seller would offer 6% and 3% of that would be offered to the buyer's agent from the listing agent, right? The listing agent sharing their commission to the buyer's agent. And if sellers don't...
And I love that you're bringing up this arbitrary number. This arbitrary number this arbitrary number is what got us into this situation in the first place. Remember what I said? That number just kept popping up all over the United States as this arbitrary number.
6%. Right. I mean, sometimes it's 3%, and sometimes it's 5.5%. I mean, there's all different. That's the point. Commissions have always been negotiable.
Right. Exactly. And so I love what you said.
That's what people don't remember.
You said this at the beginning about that agent who will take the listing because the seller wants to try it a certain way, right? Yeah. That is basically just saying, you're the expert. Let me go along for the ride and collect the commission, right?
I
am the expert. Exactly. So getting back into a little bit further, and I don't think we even talked about this when we were preparing for this, but what does that buyer's rep really mean? That buyer's rep means that you're hiring me to do this job and you're going to pay me. Just like if I went to a doctor or a lawyer or a plumber, they expect to be paid, right? And I know good and well they come after me for money. I don't know good and well. I'm not saying this is me, but let's just say that I didn't pay my doctor bill or whatever. They're going to come after me. It might go to collections. It might go to court, whatever it is. We have to start enforcing these buyer's rep agreements.
But I literally got little tingle things on my arms yesterday when you were talking about this, because I did talk to another client about this, and his answer was if the buyer is supposed to pay me that's listed in the buyer's rep agreement 3%, and he or they decide to buy a house that doesn't offer 6%, 3% being shared to the buyer's agent, then they are required by the buyer's rep agreement to make up the deficit. And I said, okay, well, what happens if they don't pay you? And he said, then I sue them. And I said, okay, but you're a sphere-based realtor. So what do you think is going to happen to your referral business if you start suing your clients? And when I proposed that to some of my groups that I have met with, they all said, I mean, it was pencils down, like, absolutely not. I'm not killing my business. But you had a different response to that yesterday.
I truly do, because this is a business, and every single person that's in the real estate industry is a small business owner. Those people will be out of business very, very quickly. And I mentioned to you, what if my referral-based business, one of these people does not want to pay me or pays me less than what I'm worth or what my value is? That next referral will do the exact same thing. And then the next referral after that will do the exact same thing. I am now working for less than what I'm worth. And if I don't know what my worth is, and I don't know how to say what my worth is very concisely, very quickly, and in these buyer's consultations where we're agreeing already that you're going to pay me, that I am worth this much money. And at the end of the day, I say, oh, I was just kidding. I'm only worth what you think I'm worth.
See, this is such an interesting divide, because I literally talked to another one on the way here who was like, well, I have to discount all, I have to discount all the time. It's just another discount. It's really interesting how my realtor partners differ in their opinion about how to handle this.
Right. And that's why I go back to it being a business. You have to run
I
a business.
agree with you that it is a business, but also I also see their side of it is in that your business is built on referrals, and does that do something to your referral business if you sue your client?
I look at it this: it absolutely does something to your referral business. It makes you worth less, and you're going to have to work twice as hard and 10 times as hard to make the money that you are worth, and unless you negotiate it up front. And what these people are saying is, I've negotiated, but guess what? I'm not going to hold them to it. I was just kidding. This buyer's rep doesn't mean anything. And I told you yesterday, I actually have taken someone to court over a buyer's rep agreement and got paid on it. Now, were they ever going to use me again? Probably not. But this is the thing. If I say, oh, you know what? I was just kidding about that. Only pay me what the seller's going to pay me, or pay me a penance, or don't pay me at all. Let's say you don't even pay me at all. Let's go to the extreme. Don't pay me at all. How long will I be in business? I mean, absolutely. Just like every doctor and every lawyer out there, they have a certain amount that they charge. And if they start doing pro bono work, it cuts into the work that they do. And if they do, they're not going to be in business. And I think I mentioned this to you yesterday.
I might get a panel together for this conversation.
I actually said this, that running a business is hard.
Running a business is hard.
It's difficult. And guess what? We've had it so easy because the MLS has always guaranteed what we were going to get paid. Now guess who has to guarantee that? I do. My business, myself, the person who's negotiating on your behalf. I get paid for my worth. So I better figure it out real quick what I'm worth. And if I'm only worth this much money, I'm only worth that much money. I get it. And you and I had talked about that. Maybe there's a sliding scale. Maybe if I've only been in the business for 2 years, I can only charge this much. Maybe if I've only done one transaction in my entire career, I should do it for free, right? Or maybe I shouldn't. You and I laugh because realtors have given themselves a gigantic raise in the past 4 years. Since this inventory thing.
This was an interesting, this is not the first time that someone has brought this point up to me.
Right.
So go ahead and explain.
So what I was saying, 4 years ago, the average price, and I'm just going to use DFW, the average price of a home in DFW was $270,000. It's now $393,000. So 4 years later, because of the inventory shortage, because of all of the things that we've created, we have actually given ourselves a raise because we never changed that magic number that just kept popping up, right? That magic number stayed the same. But what did we do differently? And this is what I will say. Maybe we had to compete a little harder. because we had to write extra contracts and we had
That's
to.
where I was going to go is like COVID made a very aggressive market for the realtor.
Right.
And the buyer and seller. I mean, mostly the buyer. But I had a bunch of realtors that were like, we're done with buyers because we can't get them into a house, and we've written 50 offers for them. So do you not agree that that automatic raise that was built in because the amount they get as a percentage was not justified because of the aggressiveness, at least DFW?
Yeah. So I will say it may have been because realtors did have to show their value. But guess what? This market isn't going to last forever, right? We're not always going to be, although I did hear something that's going to just make everybody scream here, that if we continue going at the pace we're going, with builders, it's going to take us till 2030 to get out of this rut. That's 6 more years of not having inventory. Now,
I think Jesse just pulled his hat over the top of his head.
Yeah, and that's crazy, right? That's crazy. But if we think about it too, as realtors, we made this look really easy. And this is another stat for 4 years ago. We've had, I guess they say, about a 40% increase in the amount of people getting into the real estate business in the last 4 years, meaning 4 out of every 10 agents have not had the experience of a down market or haven't had any experience more than what they've seen in the crazy no inventory market that we've had. So we made it look really easy,
but
right?
Those people got in just to capitalize on the end. They did a deal or two, and they're going to get out.
Yeah, sure. And so that's where I was going with this is with these changes, I don't think it's a bad thing that people may have to exit the real estate
and one
profession.
thing that I have always agreed with is huge changes in the real estate market will equate to people getting out that shouldn't be here because they're not treating it as their profession.
Right.
And I'm not just talking about realtors. I'm talking about all of the real estate professionals that have gotten in. I'm going to use this analogy. Somebody's going to throw a rock at my head. It's just like a roofer during a hailstorm in a neighborhood, right after a hailstorm in a neighborhood. Everybody wants to get in on that neighborhood and capitalize on the hailstorm, right?
Right.
But that doesn't mean that you should be there, Mr. I just got a truck, slapped a sign on the side of it, and pulled up with a hammer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're
so
not a professional.
I'm gonna make more people mad because this is the thing.
By the way, his next sentence, he is on his own.
Right. He's on his own. But one of the things that killed me, because I've been doing this forever, and I remember my first year in the business, and I was full time. I had no safety net, nothing. Is an agent that just got in the business that sold $1 million house. Their very first transaction is $1 million. They may have a mentor. They have very little experience. They're right out of school. And guess what they did? They just made a gigantic payday for doing,
and
for
that'll
the people
start
that they
like,
know,
I
right?
can do this, right?
Right.
But okay, I want to move on to something else. I understand what you're saying, and I do agree. And look, we have other stats to support that because the real estate market is becoming more normalized, whatever that means, that we will see people come out of the business. And I love the stat that we've talked about several times. It was like 49% of realtors did 1 or none transactions last year. I mean, that's a staggering.
Crazy.
And so that also supports, and look, NAR's already reported a drop in memberships that were not due to people exiting because of this lawsuit.
Right.
They reported a drop in memberships prior to that starting to happen. So I have an expectation, or I think, because this is a very costly business to be in, if you're not producing, that we will, that's what we see when the market changes. But I have 2 things that I want to ask you about before we wrap up for today. Number one, one of the common threads of conversation is surrounding the buyer's rep agreement. And most realtors that I have talked to don't think it's worth the paper it's printed on today. Interesting fact that I did not know, because I don't work nationally, right, is that buyer's reps are not standard in every state. Nope. I did not know that. So we've got some states that are playing catch up because they don't even use a buyer's rep agreement ever. And then also a buyer's rep agreement, I think it's important to note, is not a promulgated form. Okay. It's not issued by TREC. It's issued by the broker. So every broker there's not like a standardized TREC issued buyer's rep agreement. Right. So those 2 things were important to say before we go to the question, which is, do you think the buyer's rep agreement will look differently than it does today in its current form? And do you think there will be some sort of standardization to the buyer's rep agreement given the settlement?
Yeah. So, couple of things about that for sure. So there isn't a standardized form. However, there is a form that Texas Realtors has created for its members. So Texas
that's
Realtors
right.
can
I
use
forgot
one.
about the Texas Realtor
However,
one. Yeah.
a lot of people don't like that because it's very long.
It is. We
It
said
is.
it's 14 pages.
Yeah, it's
I forgot about
difficult
the
to maneuver
Texas Realtors
through. I can get where people say it's not worth the paper it's written on because they probably have never tried to enforce it. It can be enforced. It absolutely can. But guess what? You're talking about commissions that are above the what is it, small claims court threshold. So you've got to get a lawyer. You've got to pay for all of this stuff. You're going to hope you win. It's expensive.
It is expensive.
It's super expensive to enforce one of those. So I do
maybe
think
the
we're going
question
to be
is,
different.
will it be enforceable without having to take my clients
Right,
to court?
right. Now, see, that's the thing is I think there will be a few that are going to be enforced, and that will set precedent for everybody else to say, you know what, if I have to, I will have to take my client to court. Maybe it will be, and I mentioned this, maybe we will take people to collections. Maybe we will have some other way of doing these kind of things other than the court system. But again, that's to be figured out. But I will say this. I do think the standard buyer's rep agreement that Texas Realtors has currently will be changed. It will be something that'll be easier to understand. It'll probably be something that'll be more enforceable.
Okay.
I can say this, and I'm only talking for myself. I'm not talking for Texas Realtors. I got to remember to say that again. But when I was on the leadership team, we had already talked about changing that. However, when Texas Realtors got the lawsuit slapped, we were told, don't touch anything now that doesn't look good, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe that conversation will be revisited. I know that there are some brokers out there already that have changed their own buyer's rep agreement or have their own, which they can enforce. And I will say maybe your favorite title company, Lawyer's Title, could help you in writing something that's more enforceable. I mean, that's one of the things that we always turn to title companies to is legal language that will be, that we could use in certain situations. So I will say, yes, the buyer's rep agreement will probably change, as our contracts will probably change. Because I mentioned this to you, in all of our Texas commercial contracts, the commission is spelled out in the contract itself.
Now, I had to go hunting for this
paragraph.
I was like, wait a minute. I don't remember this paragraph.
Yeah.
And tell them where.
Yeah. So we were talking about the regular 1 to 4 family contract on page 9 and 10 is information pages that is used typically for the title company. And at the bottom of page 9, it says that the commission offering is whatever percent, and it's kind of information for the title company. In the commercial contracts, it's actually written into the contract where the buyer and the seller both agree and write and know exactly what the seller is paying the buyer's agent for a commission.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting paragraph. I mean, I'm not an escrow officer, so I don't look at contracts every day like they do. But I was like, wait a minute, I don't know what paragraph you're talking about.
So that's where I'm going with this whole thing is I think that might change.
Okay.
I think that it might be written right into our contracts. We also have another vehicle right now that Texas Realtors has for every member, and that is the agreement between brokers for a commission. So if you are negotiating commission that's not on MLS, or even if there's a for sale by owner, there's a form for a for sale by owner that you can go
out this week too.
that you can actually go in and have them sign before you show the property. That might be something where the pendulum is swinging we start doing right away to protect ourselves, to make sure that we are getting commission from the seller. We talked about how we get it from the buyer. That's the buyer's rep.
Right.
How do we get it from the seller?
Right.
And how do we hold the seller to paying that? So there's a bunch of these things that we're going to work out. Again, like we talked about at the very beginning, I'm not worried at all. I know that this industry is resilient.
Yep.
We will figure this out.
We will.
This is something that it's going to be a TBD. More information will come, to us, and we'll figure this out and we'll move forward with this. But at the end of the day, people need buyer's reps. People need to be represented on the buyer side. People need to be represented on the seller side.
Yes.
If you're not paying commission, and I got to tell you this, because one of my agents brought this to me, and this is a great scenario of how we can move forward. If you were talking to your seller and you say, hey, seller, let's have an open house. How do we get the most people to our open house? And we say, well, let's charge them to come to the open house. How many people do you think are going to come? 0, right? Because they're not going to come because they don't know if they like the house, right? But let's make it free. Maybe we'll get a few people. What do you say we pay them to come to the open house? And if we pay them to come to the open house, more people will come, right? But let's say we take this one step further. We're going to only pay the one person that buys the house to purchase this house. Seller, how do you feel about that? Would you be willing to pay that and we'll call it a commission.
Uh-huh.
Would you be willing to pay that to bring people into your house to find that one person that's going to buy it? Absolutely.
Yeah.
You guys have just got my one piece of knowledge there that will help you sell every single seller on a commission that they're going to pay a buyer's agent.
And there's a few ways out there right now that we're talking about that we can explain to sellers why they should pay a commission.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of my agents told me that today because
I like that one.
we were
Jesse,
talking about that.
think?
But
It's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. So hey, let's pay
Consensus
somebody
says?
to come and look at your house, and we're only going to pay that one person,
That one
that
person
one buyer's agent
brings a
that
buyer.
brings me the
a
buyer.
qualified buyer.
Yeah.
Yeah. The buyer.
But I'm going to offer it to everybody.
I think it's great.
Yeah, I'm going to get
I
you to
think,
my house.
you know, those conversations, we do have to do a really good job of explaining to a seller why they need to offer a commission to sell their house. And we also do have to do a really good job of explaining to buyers why they need to be represented by a buyer's agent, right?
Right.
And so I can't tell you how many threads of conversations that I've seen on social media right now. And look, I mean, our big Fidelity sales rally just happened, Division 6. I mean, it was the first time we've done it since I've been at Lawyers, just happened to be the Tuesday after this. And Tom Ferry was the one that ran the sales meeting. And so a whole section of what we talked about was how to educate our clients on how to express value, right? And it was really interesting to me because one of the things that he did, and NAR's got an article, it's 179 things that realtors do during a transaction. Right. He's got one that's 90 things. I'm sure Buffini will roll something out here pretty quick, but we're starting to see these lists of this is what I do for you in a transaction. And when I talked to my clients about it, I said, look, I looked at the Tom Ferry list of 90. Number 90 says close out the file. All right. Like, so some of this is kind of, well, it's just, my point is it's kind of minuscule, you know, and it's not something that you would really emphasize to a client. Like I'm closing out your file. So it's a big deal, you know, but when you put the list together as a comprehensive list of 90 things that you have to do as a standard part of a transaction, that's a powerful number.
Looks impressive, right? It's
impressive.
Super impressive. Yeah.
And so we have, or I have, for the people that partner with us and work with me, a lot of helpful things put together in case you're struggling with what does that exactly mean? And once you start thinking about through some of these things, you are like, oh, wait, I forgot it. I should say this. And you start to develop your own. So I think making those listing presentations and buyer presentations really powerful and power packed is going to be also important. And so our buyer and seller guides are here for our clients as well. They're welcome to take anything they want and use it in their own presentations. So we have a lot of resources that we're putting together to help support our clients through this. And the biggest thing that I offer is conversation. You know, and let's disarm this and really look at what this is going to mean for us moving forward. What I don't like, and what I have seen so many times before, is anytime there's a giant bomb dropped, and I don't want to give this the bomb name, okay, but anytime some major change happens in real estate, it suspends things for 30, 60, 90 days. And what I don't like is if this had happened in November, I'd be like, everybody have a Merry Christmas and we'll see you in January.
We'll see you on the other side.
But the problem is it's the end of March.
Right.
Okay. Let's not derail our what we need to be a robust spring and summer selling season. And I will illustrate this as a point, because a lot of what I'm seeing on social media is, well, now my seller doesn't want to pay commissions. Now my seller doesn't want to pay commissions. I see a lot of this because my entire social media is full of real estate professionals. So I see a concentrated amount of this stuff come at me all the time. But I had a conversation with my dad. My dad is a retired lieutenant colonal in the Marines. Okay. Very thorough in life. Okay.
I've met your dad.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he is retired. He wakes up every day and he watches 2 to 3 hours of news. We start with the local news in Austin. We move to the national news, and sometimes there's some world news thrown in. And when I talked to him on Sunday, he said, what NAR lawsuit?
Right.
And so I think that was, and I was surprised. I was like, what do you mean you don't know about the lawsuit, Dad?
Oh my God.
And I said, are you but I know he's not living in a hole, right?
Right.
So I think we've given this, and this is what I want to leave everyone with, too much power. We've given this too much power.
Yeah.
Let's take our power back. Let's put our heads down. Let's do business as we've always done it. Sharon, the real president, he said it the best way. There's now 2 ways to get somewhere. One takes 3 minutes longer.
Right.
So let's approach this with some calmness. Let's remove the panic. Let's sit down and take a look. You mentioned two big points of the settlement, which were commissions are no longer disclosed in MLS, and now we've got to execute a buyer's rep agreement.
Right.
The end.
Let me tell you.
I
let me tell you
those
something.
are the two big key points. There's other things.
Something that I even forgot to mention. But if you have any questions about the NAR lawsuit, there is a webpage. It's facts.realtor. facts.realtor.
I love
it. Even talks to you about
website.
whether or not financing is going to be able to include. It has every
That was
answer.
another question. We've had a million of them.
Answer,
Yeah.
every question that you can think of is they put this out so that we can be well prepared. The other thing is, and this is kind of exactly what you're saying, I think the agents that are going to do well through this are the ones that can handle change. It's okay. Change is okay, but you and I were laughing because realtors hate change, right?
Well,
we don't even change our picture over 20 years,
but
right?
People in general don't
people
like
in general,
change.
yeah, but realtors are really bad. So think about this as an opportunity to hone your skills, to know your value, to be able to go out there and talk to your clients about what your job is and what you're going to do for them. Because quite frankly, a lot of them think that we stick a sign in the yard and collect the paycheck, right?
Yeah.
And that's absolutely 179 ways of things that we aren't telling them what we do.
The TV shows have made it really bad. I talked about that on.
So we're going to be okay. We just have to change a little bit.
Well, Russell, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. I appreciate your wisdom and your information, and I reserve the right to have you back
Absolutely.
as things
Anytime.
unfold. So thank you so much. And again, I'm your host, Tamera Gady. This is another episode. If you like my content, you're really going to love my escrow team. So let's get a conversation going about your title needs, and you make it a great day.